Hi, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and today we're coming with a Rico report. For those of y'all who may not know, this is where we jump from topic to topic, all kinds of random things, just to kind of catch you up on everything going on with the Commanders since the last time I did a Rico report. All of the random things that fall in between the cracks, we're here to discuss those today. So many things to talk about. Super excited. First of all, we have a big RFK Stadium update that I don't know seemed to went under the radar. Also, there's an NFL coach out there that thinks Jayden Daniels is already the best player in the NFL. Also, we have people making predictions for the Commanders to be in the next Super Bowl. Also, we got to talk about Kliff Kingsbury choosing Washington and to stay here as an offensive coordinator over going to the Saints to be a head coach. Also, the Washington Commanders signed 2 players. And before we dive into all of that, of course, I have my daily trivia question for you. This one is, what former Utah star joined Washington via trade in his 7th NFL season in 1971 and went on to catch 208 passes in 6 years with the club? This is probably one of the most difficult trivia questions I've given y'all yet. Of course, I'm gonna give y'all the answer to that trivia question at the end of the video, but this one is crazy. Make sure you stiff on that like button, stiff on the subscription button, stiff on the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Really appreciate all of y'all for pulling up and supporting every video. Be on the lookout for way more content, and I'm working on planning a live stream eventually, probably like a week or 2 from now, so stay tuned for that. Without further ado, let's go dive into this video right now, man. Let's get it. Adam. And you know, Rico reports as promised, I'm sure of it, that at least you're gonna learn one thing before you walk away from this video. Everybody that watches this video, there'll be at least one thing that you'll learn from it. That's the promise of every Rico report. So first of all, again, like I mentioned before the intro video, I have no idea how this went under the radar as bad as it did, but back on February 4th, it was officially announced that DC can control its destiny at the RFK campus now. Shouts out to Mayor Muriel Bowser for tweeting it herself. She said it's official. DC can control its own destiny at the RFK campus. Today, the Council of DC unanimously approved my legislation to accept the transfer of jurisdiction of the RFK site to DC. And now we have the opportunity to put the land back to productive use for our city. Let's get to work. And again, this was back on February 4th. I don't know how this went so far under the radar. It's crazy because this is a huge monumental step in the right direction for the Commanders' next stadium being at the RFK site. Officially, the DC Council passed a bill on Tuesday, so again, this is all the way back, that opens the door for development around a potential new stadium at the site of the RFK Stadium. The council unanimously passed the Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium Campus Emergency Approval Resolution, which transfers the RFK site from the National Park Service to the district. It extends the stadium lease approved by Congress and former President Joe Biden. Quote, this transfer of the RFK campus will allow over 7 million square feet of property to be developed for the benefit of our city and residents, unquote, said Mayor Bowser in a letter to the DC Council. Now, the mayor must come up with an economic development plan for a new stadium that the council approves. So that's basically like the next major step, next major hurdle, obstacle. And then finishing up the article, the competition for the new stadium appears to be down to DC and Maryland. But Washington Commanders owner Josh Harris signaled to reporters on Monday that DC appears to have the edge right now. For those of y'all that want the next stadium to be an RFK site, sounds like you're winning right now. This sounds like a big step in that direction. It seems like every step that we take towards a new stadium is getting closer and closer to being in DC at the former RFK site. Maybe we can get a lot of that good luck and good superstition back from playing there again. We won Super Bowls there, all 3 of the Super Bowls that we won. Maybe we can go back there and start to win some more. Even though with Jayden Daniels and where we're headed right now, I'm expecting us to win Super Bowls in Landover, Maryland before we even move to DC. We'll see how that goes though. Now moving on to the next topic. Again, I'm just amazed that wasn't like plastered everywhere. I know it was like right before the Super Bowl. We were talking about all sorts of things. You had like Super Bowl media week and all of that type of stuff. But I'm still surprised that like kind of just was swept under the rug like real quick. We just skipped past it. And I mean, I know we're excited about free agency, the draft and everything, but that's pretty monumental, man. Now, speaking of the Super Bowl, I don't know if y'all noticed, but Jayden Daniels got mentioned 5 minutes and 20 seconds into the Super Bowl. Like, people cannot avoid talking about him. He is a star. Also, Grant Paulson, who was at the Super Bowl, or at least Super Bowl week, he noted that a respected NFL offensive coach told him that if he could start a team with any player in the entire NFL right now, it would be Jayden Daniels. And of course, it's more than likely not a Commanders coach, because if it were a Commanders coach, then he'd just go ahead and say such and such said, because that's them riding with their guy, and then of course it wouldn't hold as much weight. But the fact that this is a coach outside of the Washington Commanders franchise saying that if there were one player that I could start a franchise with right now, it would be Jayden Daniels. Now, not only is that because of elite quarterback play, not only is that because of positional value with him being a quarterback rather than like a wide receiver or something like that, but then also age is a factor in there as well, because of course when you're doing like your top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, Jayden Daniels probably slides at 5th for most people, behind guys like Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, because they've been doing it for so long. They have heavier, more impressive resumes. That's unfair to Jayden Daniels. He's only played 1 season. He's already accomplished more than any of those guys ever did in their rookie seasons. But at the same time, the reason that this coach is probably saying this is because Jayden Daniels is younger than those other 4 elite quarterbacks in the NFL. And so that's why, projecting on to the future, if you're looking from now on, from today forward, who has the potential to win you the most Super Bowls in like the next 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, there's an argument to be made that it's Jayden Daniels. Again, this is a coach outside of the Washington Commanders fan base, and Grant Paulson finished it up by saying, hard to pay a player a better compliment than that. So my point is, people around the NFL, it may not necessarily be everybody, it may not even necessarily be the majority, but there are people in the NFL that are coaches, execs, looking at Jayden Daniels as the best player to build a franchise around out of any other player in the entire NFL. And especially with how Pat Mahomes looked against the same Eagles defense compared to how Jayden Daniels looked against that same exact Eagles defense the last 2 times we played them, we can kind of even size ourselves up as an entire team against the Eagles by comparing ourselves to what the Chiefs did against them compared to what we did against them. What the Chiefs did in that Super Bowl, I mean, making it almost unwatchable. I mean, shouts out to PFT commenter who's a big Commanders fan. He tweeted, I'll just say it because we're all thinking it, the biggest takeaway from that Super Bowl game is how good the Washington Commanders actually were. And I feel like fumbles, along with the refs, you can blame the refs somewhat, but I feel like fumbles is the #1 biggest reason why we ended up losing that game, especially the way that we did. I feel like refs played a part, and I also feel like there was a huge talent gap. So I believe those are like really the top 3, but I feel like the fumbles by far take the biggest blame for why we lost that. And then shouts out the Dots by Daniels, of course, a Commanders fan. He said, it took a super team to take Jayden Daniels down is what I'm taking away from this Super Bowl. And I agree. That's what I was doing the whole time I'm looking at the Super Bowl. I'm like, okay, so Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs are struggling this much, and Jayden Daniels didn't look that bad. Jayden Daniels just got sold by his teammates, fumbling the ball and all that type of stuff. Jayden Daniels looked way better against that same exact Eagles defense than Pat Mahomes did. No lie. And then even shouts out to @Denson Day for pointing out, he said his takeaways from the Super Bowl. 1, Jayden Daniels is him. 2, the Commanders need to get way better in the trenches, like way better. Completely agree. We're going to talk about that some later. Marshawn Lattimore getting cooked by A.J. Brown was more about A.J. Brown being good than Lattimore being bad. I agree with that. And then 4th, go get Myles Garrett. I completely agree wholeheartedly with all 4 of those things. Couldn't have worded it better myself, man. And so, I mean, honestly, Pat Mahomes was struggling to move the ball and even score points against the Eagles. I mean, they were literally scoreless until the Eagles basically threw their backups out there like they were coasting to a win. They were chilling. So that also has me thinking, like, was our O-line better than the Chiefs' O-line as well? Because Pat Mahomes was going through it in that game. Like, he was running for his life. And now, granted, Jayden Daniels is more mobile than Pat Mahomes, but I don't know. I don't feel like our offensive line got whooped as bad as the Chiefs' offensive line got whooped. I don't know what that was. But more importantly, though, the biggest thing to take away is that Jayden Daniels definitely looked way better against that same Eagles defense than Pat Mahomes did. Way better. And Jayden was moving the ball all up and down against that same Eagles defense. But his team around him just kept fumbling and folding in every way possible. But, I mean, Check out these drives. Shouts out to Computer Cowboy for even standing up for us, because he's not a Commanders fan, completely neutral analyst. You had somebody saying that, like, Jayden Daniels was not any better against the Eagles than Pat Mahomes was. And then Computer Cowboy, who's like a purely stats guy. A lot of the stats I show y'all, like all of those different charts, that's what he does. He's a neutral statistics guy and statistician, basically. And he pointed out the fact that our drives against the Eagles, 54 yards, field goal. Second drive, teammate loses fumble. Third drive, 45 yards, field goal. Fourth drive, 56 yards, touchdown. Fifth drive, teammate fumbles, KO. Sixth drive, 46 yards, field goal, my fault. Halftime, it took to our 7th drive to finally have a 3-and-out. 8th drive, 70 yards, touchdown. 9th drive, teammate loses, fumble, game effectively over. Any drive after that literally doesn't matter. We're already down by like 20, 30 points already, basically. The game is already out of reach. It's already so late that it didn't matter. That was way better than anything Pat Mahomes was doing against the Eagles in his first 9 drives, I'll tell you that. So I'm telling you, hey, Jayden Daniels, he may have something to him. And also, I think it's worth pointing out the fact that the last team to beat the 2024-2025 Eagles were us. Them boys after their bye week of starting 2-2, the only game they ever lost, I believe, was against us the second time that we played them. Like, we were the only team that really caught the elite version of the Eagles off guard. Because remember, going into that bye week, they were 2-2. They had so much dysfunction. People were talking about firing Nick Sirianni as their head coach. A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts had beef. They were all over the place. It was looking like a lot of the experiments that they went in on wasn't working out. Like, it looked like, should we just blow this thing up? They came out of the bye week and was like the best team in the NFL after the bye week. And the only team to beat them in that best team in the NFL version of themselves were the Commanders. Jayden Daniels, more specifically, with those game-winning drives, and the fact that our defense allowed like 30-something points, I believe, and Jayden Daniels had to go outscore that and score 30-something himself against the best statistical defense in the entire NFL. Also, stats just don't lie, man. Period. Like, shouts out to All Galdi for pointing out Jayden Daniels, as a rookie playing in 3 road playoff games with the Commanders as the underdog each time, went 2-1 and had the following rankings for the postseason among a stacked field of quarterbacks, elite quarterbacks in the playoffs. He was number 1 in total QBR. He was number 3 in overall Pro Football Focus grade, and number 4 in EPA per play. We're not done there. Shouts out to @JDanielsMVP for pointing out the fact that he was also number 1 in passing yards with 822. He was number 2 in passing yards per game with 274. He was tied for first with passing touchdowns with 5, and then he was 7th in rushing yards with 135. Come on, like, that's elite level stuff. And then look at what he had to work with. Let's just start with these stats right here. And this Eagles team just showed you that defense can definitely win championships. And look at what our defense ranked by the end of the regular season. We were 28th in opponent rushing play percentage, which, doesn't really say much about you. It's just the fact that they ran the ball, like, not even that much. They didn't run the ball often against us, and yet we still allowed that many yards. That's the only reason that first stat matters, because it's like, teams didn't even really run the ball often against you. They only ran the ball against you 47.56% of the time, which is the 5th lowest out of the entire NFL. And yet, you still allowed the 2nd most opponent rushing yards per game with opponent yards per rush with 5, then opponent rushing yards per game with 134.4, which was 31st, and then opponent rushing touchdowns per game at 1.4, which is ranked 29th. Again, teams didn't even run the ball against us that much, and we were still that bad against the run. And that's just the run only. That's all we're looking at. But then if you want to take a look at just overall defense, we're taking a look at this chart right here, which is EPA per play allowed and Pro Football Focus defensive grade. You can see it. The Commanders were like one of the worst 2 defenses according to this chart. Like, one of the worst. And as you can see up there at the top right, the Eagles were by far the best defense in the entire NFL. And then the poor Carolina Panthers, you see them at the bottom left. You got to pray for them boys over there. But the Commanders weren't much better. We were right near the bottom of the barrel, are only definitively better than the Carolina Panthers, because even the Jaguars were a little bit better than us at EPA per play allowed. The only way we were better than them was defensive Pro Football Focus grade. So we got a lot of work is my point. Jayden Daniels achieved so much, but there's only so much you can do when your defense is doing all of that. And then on top of that, his receivers were Terry McLaurin, De'Ami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, and Jamison Crowder. But shouts out to Terry and Zach Ertz, though, because who I do want to bring back, especially in Zach Ertz's part, and hopefully we go ahead and extend Terry McLaurin even more years beyond now. I hope we go ahead and get that done in the offseason so we don't got to worry about him for the next 3-4 years. But they were doing their parts. I mean, look at this right here. From the 2024-2025 postseason, players with 20-plus targets with 0 drops, you only had Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, Terry McLaurin, and Khalil Shakir. Those are the only 4 guys, and we had 2 of them. So again, if there's ever a case to make sure, like, hey, please make sure you re-sign Zach Ertz for at least next year, the 2025 season, I think that's one of them right there. And of course, Terry McLaurin is a dog, a definitive dog right there. Then shouts out to my boy Jamal at LetMall Make sure you follow him on Twitter, subscribe to him on YouTube and everything. He tweeted, hey, the good thing going for Washington and AP is that Jayden at quarterback is very attractive, and I fully believe players will want to come to Washington for that reason, and that makes AP's job a little bit easier. But of course, us as fans are excited because, just like I said, with our defense lacking so poorly, and then outside of Terry and Zach Ertz, our Jayden Daniels' weapons, we'll be able to attract some guys to help with those situations because of Jayden Daniels and how elite he already looks. But also, the NFC East is the most successful division in football. If you haven't noticed, the NFC East is already the only division to have each team win a Super Bowl ever, just period, out of all divisions in football. But now, all 4 have won at least 2 Super Bowls or more. Literally the best division in football success-wise historically. But now you also have 2 NFC East teams playing against each other in this most recent NFC Championship. So it's hard to say we aren't the scariest division of all of football right now as well. But my main point is, with how serious this division is, we cannot play games about getting better if we want to win. We need to be very aggressive in improving this team this offseason. It needs to be go, 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 green light, put the foot on the gas, turbo type of thing. And also, we always say, when it comes to building a Super Bowl contender, you have to start with building your team to beat the other 3 teams in your division consistently. You got to go through them to get there. But how about when your division rival in the Eagles is also the team that also just won the Super Bowl? So you're literally building yourself to defeat them, and that's like the primary goal. Our whole goal in the offseason is, how do we beat the Eagles? First and foremost, they're the best team in the NFL technically, and they're also a division rival. And then, I mean, not only did but they like dominated. It wasn't even just winning. They dominated the Super Bowl. And so it may not be easy, like easier said than done, but we know exactly what we must do. We have an exact goal. And luckily for us, in our case, I mean, with the Eagles, I mean, boy, Kellen Moore gone. Milton Williams gone. Josh Sweat more than likely gone. Mekhi Becton, we'll see where he goes. Graham probably gone. Gainwell will probably take an opportunity elsewhere to get a larger role and more money. And also, we, of course, got to point out the fact that the NFC East hasn't had a repeat winner this century. So everything points to the fact that, hey, Commanders, is our time. The Eagles got theirs in. Now it's time for us to get ours in. And that's a team with a good but not elite quarterback in Jalen Hurts that just won a Super Bowl because he had a dominant team around him. The other 51 guys, or at least the other 21 starters, were dominant. Once they have to pay everybody, especially those Georgia dogs, when those contracts come up, that team will not be able to stay together and stay as dominant around the quarterback like they were this year. And don't get me wrong, shouts out to the Eagles. Congratulations and all of that, but Jalen Hurts cannot carry a team like Jayden Daniels can. So imagine what happens when the Eagles naturally get worse, and star players and even coaches demand more money, larger roles, end up leaving for other teams or even staying with the Eagles, and then eating up a higher percentage of the cap space, while the Commanders just are consistently just getting better and better with every offseason that passes. You already saw the jump we did from 4 wins to 14, including the playoffs. Why would we not continue to get better and better? And again, it's impossible to go up when you're at the top just naturally, just period. But then also, for the factors I've already laid out, I think this 2024 Eagles team will be able to beat the future Eagles teams in games. Like if you have to put the 2024 Eagles up against whatever they may potentially be in 2025, 2026, I would put my money on the 2024 Eagles. I don't think they're going to get like drastically worse, but there's just going to be a natural decline in their team. They're going to be really good. They're still going to be elite. They're not going to be as dominant. And I think with us getting better, I think we can find a way to beat them as soon as this next season coming up. And you know why I super trust Adam Peters to build us an anti-Eagles team that can go and win it all, going through the Eagles, not around, through the Eagles, is because, shouts out to my boy Disco, and I completely agree. I was thinking about this, but I felt like he worded it well. He said, look at how the 49ers roster was built. Look at where they are strong. Adam Peters was a part of the staff that traded 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance, yet remained in Super Bowl contention after that with. I have full confidence in Adam Peters. But I also want to add to the fact that, like, first of all, in Adam Peters, I trust just in general. Like, I think Adam Peters, he's that guy with everything. I'm going to give him the biggest benefit of the doubt. But then also, he has proof of product from how he built both the 49ers and helped build the Super Bowl winning Broncos, with Peyton Manning literally being a shell of himself. He was basically placebo Peyton Manning out there. Both elite trenches teams. You got to pay attention to that. Adam Peters, wherever he goes, he helps build elite trenches. And the Eagles just won their Super Bowl because they were the best trenches team in the entire NFL. And not only do I trust Adam Peters to recognize that, to scout that, but I also trust him to accomplish it as well. So I'm super excited about our future. And also shouts out to my dog Marshall over there. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. He said AP has 3 rings with 3 different organizations. Those trenches are getting fixed. Everywhere Adam Peters goes, he wins. Big time games. He was a scout for the Patriots, and Bill Belichick even gave him a lot of the credit for a lot of the things that they were doing team evaluation wise, scouting, all of that type of stuff. Then he went to the Broncos, and he was a big time executive as far as that. He was literally the guy that drafted Justin Simmons for them and helped build them into that team that again won the Super Bowl in spite of their bad quarterback play in Peyton Manning. And then what he did with the 49ers, again, shouts out to my boy Disco for even pointing out the fact that they traded all of those first round picks and completely whiffed on Trey Lance, and they were still in the Super Bowl immediately afterwards, which is very impressive. They put on the biggest handicap possible and still found a way to make it to the Super Bowl soon afterwards. So, and he already has quarterback here. No need to trade a bunch of first round picks to get quarterback when you already have a top 5 quarterback in Jayden Daniels. Imagine how he's going to build this team here without that severe handicap. I mean, it sounds like going to the Super Bowl is a floor at this point. Super Bowl a bust type of thing. And then also ESPN already even thinks that we're one of the best teams in the NFL. They just came out with an article back on February 9th, just a couple of days ago, early NFL Power Rankings 2025. They have the Kansas City Chiefs 1, Buffalo Bills 2, Detroit Lions 3, and then they have the Eagles 4th. Wow, like they're expected, again, I'm expecting them to not be as dominant, but I wouldn't go as far as to say they're going to already go from number 1 to the 4th best team. I feel like that's a little disrespectful to put 3 whole teams in front of them, but again, for the reasons I've explained, they're not going to be able to keep everybody together. I mean, Zach Bond, they got to find a way to pay him. He was on a really cheap 1-year deal because he wasn't that good for the Saints. He came to the Eagles and balled out. Now he's going to eat up a lot of cap space to try to keep him. They have to pay so many guys. I don't think they're going to be able to keep everybody. Of course, the Georgia Dogs, who they just recently signed, Saquon Barkley, and then of course, like your young talent like Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, who were just rookies this past season. They're going to be able to keep a lot of those guys. Jalen Hurts is going to stay, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, but a lot of those other guys that are around them, they're not going to be able to keep a lot of those guys. So I am expecting them to take at least a step back. But I don't know. 4th is a crazy. Then they have the Baltimore Ravens 5th, and then they have us 6th, right behind the Baltimore Ravens for the best team in the NFL. 6th above the Packers, Chargers, Bengals, Vikings, Texans, Rams, whoever you want to put up there. Everybody else. And then even moving on from that, our boy Kirk Benkert, who's one of the biggest Jayden Daniels fans, even before we drafted him, he tweeted, Commanders versus Ravens Super Bowl next year, and basically like that's it, like he's booking it, like go ahead and stamp that, that's what it's gonna be. And some people, of course, in the replies were saying, no, the Lions are going to be the better team and things like that. But we beat the Lions, and that was before they lost Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn. Like, they've lost so much talent, so many coaches, so they're going to lose so many players as well. I think the Lions will still be really good, but I think, if anything, the 2025 Lions will be worse than the 2024 Lions, and I think the 2025 Commanders will be better than the 2024 Commanders. So I think we're in opposite directions as far as where our future holds. So if we beat them last year, I don't see why we wouldn't beat them next year, but that's just because I believe we will be one of the 3 best teams in the NFL. I don't think we'll be 6th. I think we'll be one of the 3, and I feel pretty strongly about our chances of making it to the Super Bowl. I mean, again, we just talked about how Jayden Daniels got to the NFC Championship. I mean, if we're talking about MVP candidates, if you're arguing about who did the most with the least, Jayden Daniels was the best player in the NFL. Shouts out to Pat Mahomes, shouts out to Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and those guys, but nobody did more with less than Jayden Daniels. Point blank, period. And there's a reason Jalen Hurts wasn't in any of these conversations about MVP of the league, man. His team was dominant. So imagine what Jayden Daniels is going to do when he has a dominant team around him. And also, I want to point out the fact that the NFL, ESPN.com, everybody feels like we're at least a top 6 team in the NFL. And that's before we go crazy in free agency, with the 3rd most cap space in the NFL, while also being the #1 free agency destination in the entire NFL, mostly due to Jayden Daniels as well. Also, shouts out to DCZ Wall on Twitter. He said the Commanders being at number 6 going into next year in the power rankings is something I'm still getting used to. And I'm not gonna lie, that is a little crazy. Being a single-digit number in power rankings just by itself is insane. But then you even have Marcus Peters. He did a whole rant and he had like a whole segment on Get Up NFL on ESPN. And he said that he believes that the Commanders are the biggest threat in the NFC to the Eagles next season. I completely agree, and I feel like a lot of the people on that panel that were up there with them, I mean, they couldn't really say nothing. They were like, yeah, hey, I think you're right. It's probably between the Commanders and the Eagles for fighting over the NFC next year. I'm not exactly sure why people have the Lions above us, but it is what it is, man. Shouts out to Marcus Spears for seeing it, though, and being smart and knowing that we should be above the Lions, at least in the NFC. And then also, FanDuel already came out with their MVP award odds, and they feel like Lamar Jackson's #1 at plus 550, Josh Allen's #2 at plus 600, then you have Pat Mahomes at plus 700, Joe Burrow at plus 800, and then Jayden Daniels is 5th at a plus 1100 odds, which already goes to show that he is a top 5 quarterback. And even the eyes of the Vegas guys and the odds makers and things like that. Also, again, stats don't lie. I mean, 3 times in NFL history has a rookie quarterback engineered a game with 0 turnovers and 0 punts. They are Jayden Daniels week 2 2024, Jayden Daniels week 3 2024, and then Jayden Daniels wild card 2024 as well. That's it. Out of the 3 times that's ever happened in the NFL, all of them have been Jayden Daniels. And then you even have Troy Aikman. He did a whole segment. The Cowboys great himself did a whole segment breaking down how he believes Jayden Daniels, if anything, will only get better than what we just saw in his rookie season. And again, it was the best rookie season in NFL history and arguably of all of sports history. And Troy Aikman, again, a Cowboys great, so I know Cowboys fans it has to kill them inside to see this, but he says that he believes that this wasn't a fluke, and if anything, Jayden Daniels is only going to get better. I mean, right now, everybody loves Jayden Daniels. Cam Newton is really the only one downplaying Jayden Daniels. He recently just said that he would still take Caleb Williams over Jayden Daniels today. I mean, hey, shouts out to Cam Newton, man, but you're going to stop hating on my dog, Jayden Daniels, eventually, man. Because he's been really doing it, like throwing little sneaky stuff in there all year, talking about the NFC doesn't have any playmaking quarterbacks, all of them are game managers and things like that. That was including Jayden Daniels. He said that in like November or December, something crazy when we already saw Jayden Daniels was balling. Maybe at worst late October. And it's just like random things over there, like he's always giving them backhanded compliments. You'll see, Cam Newton, you'll see. And just for fun, during Super Bowl week, you had all of the celebrity things going on, right? You had everybody having fun, and especially during the flag football game, you had Jayden Daniels with Jets elite corner, Sauce Gardner. You had Giant star wide receiver, Malik Neighbors, and they were all just having a good old time, right? And they were even having like some inside jokes together. Like there was that one video where they were talking about the talent on both teams, and they clearly weren't talking about actual talent and skill as far as football goes. But also, I mean, hey man, Sauce Gardner clearly looked like he really liked hanging around Jayden Daniels, we may be able to pick apart that Jets roster. It may not necessarily be immediately, because Sauce Gardner, if you wanted him, you have to trade for him. But maybe when his contract finally ends, maybe he comes over to the Commanders as well. We'll see. But Jayden Daniels was mixing and mingling with everybody, and they were having a good time. And it seems like everybody's just gravitating towards Jayden Daniels. If you wanted to see the video, here it is real quick.
I definitely want to play with Team Speed. You know, Team Speed for sure. You know, I see a lot out there. Go Team Speed.
I see a lot of talent out there. There's too much talent on both sides of the ball. I think I may be with Sauce, Team Speed.
Oh, I see a lot of talent. People I didn't think had that much talent. I see a lot of talent. And I'm going on Team Speed for Showski.
Hopefully YouTube doesn't get upset with me playing that clip, but I just thought that was funny, and I wanted to definitely show that to y'all. Now, moving on, Commanders offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury preferred calling plays in Washington with Jayden Daniels rather than taking the Saints head coaching job, per Grant Paulson. The Saints head coaching job was, quote, his if he wanted it, unquote, but Kliff Kingsbury ultimately decided to stay in DC. That is actually really big news. We kind of assumed that, but to hear like it was officially reported, and that's literally what happened, is music to my ears. So it sounds like he literally chose to be a Commanders offensive coordinator over being a Saints head coach, a clear promotion in at least job title, money, role, responsibility, but maybe, hey, a demotion in every other way, like chances of success or stress, you know what I'm saying? So, hey, shouts out to Kliff Kingsbury for even recognizing, hey, man, this Commanders thing that we got going on, again, another testament to how we're going to be the #1 free agency destination right now, because it's not even just Kliff Kingsbury, players are looking as well. Also want to point out the fact that that also means that Kingsbury was the preferred choice for their head coaching job over Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, who ended up accepting the job and becoming the next Saints head coach. He was their rebound option. Kliff Kingsbury was their favorite option, at least outside of Ben Johnson. It's, again, they said that it was his job if he wanted it, and he turned it down. So not only do the Eagles get slightly worse by losing their offensive coordinator and Kellen Moore to the Saints, but also the Saints, and I'm pretty sure most of the NFL world, feels like Kliff Kingsbury is better than Kellen Moore. And I'll take that at least as well, man. I'm happy to have him. I mean, shouts out to these stats. The Commanders' offensive rankings this season under Kliff Kingsbury: points per game 5th, yards per game 7th, successful plays 3rd, EPA per drive 4th, red zone drive 2nd, 4th down EPA per play 1st, literally historically the best in NFL history, 3rd down conversion percentage 2nd. Kliff Kingsbury cooked. Jayden Daniels played a large role in it, but Kliff Kingsbury played a large role as well. And then lastly, before we get up out of here, of course, the Washington Commanders did sign 2 players. Shouts out to Brian Manning of Commanders Wire. This was back on February 5th. The Washington Commanders added a veteran offensive tackle to the offseason roster on Tuesday, signing Bobby Hart to a reserved future contract. Hart, 30 years old, was initially signed to the Washington Commanders practice squad on October 29th, but did not appear in a single game for the Commanders in 2024, of course. A former 7th-round draft pick from Florida State in 2015, Hart is a well-traveled and experienced veteran. He's appeared in 98 career games with 67 starts. Hart was Cincinnati's right tackle from 2016 to 2018, starting all but 3 games for the Bengals. Like, he has experience now. Hart began his career with the New York Giants, where he spent 3 seasons appearing in 33 games with 21 starts. From there, he went to Cincinnati before landing with Buffalo, Miami, Buffalo again, Tennessee, Buffalo again, and then Detroit. He signed with the Lions during training camp in 2023, but was released during final cuts and did not play in 2023 at all. Then he signed with the Commanders in October, likely because of his previous relationship with offensive lines coach Bobby Johnson. For fans thinking this is a move to fix the Washington's offensive line, it's not. Yeah, and I really want to make sure I emphasize this. This is not a potential starter for your offensive line, just to go ahead and let you know. Continuing with the article, remember, teams sign players to reserve future contracts after the season is complete to a 90-man offseason roster. And we got to cut it down to 53 before we start the next season. The Commanders will continue to add players through free agency, the NFL draft, and undrafted free agency. Hart's presence adds depth at offensive tackle and, more importantly, experienced depth. Washington understands that if Hart ever starts a game, it failed to adequately address the offensive line in the offseason. Whether it's free agency or the draft, the Commanders will bring in more help along the offensive line this season. Basically, hey, shouts out to the Commanders for signing Bobby Hart, and that's the reason we're including this in a Rico report instead of a separate video, because this is not a monumental signing. If Bobby Hart ever has to play in a game for us next season, we did something wrong, basically. That tells you the caliber of, what the potential is of this player. Also, another Bobby, the Commanders went ahead and signed cornerback Bobby Price to a contract. So if you're a Bobby out there, watch out. The Commanders may be hitting you up soon. Price is 26 years old. Shouts out to Tony Camino of NFL Trade Rumors for this. He signed on with the Lions as an undrafted free agent out of Norfolk State back in April of 2020. He was released coming out of training camp and was on and off their practice squad before being promoted to their active roster. Price became an unrestricted free agent after signing an exclusive rights contract with the Lions and caught on with the Cardinals. He signed with the Commanders ahead of the 2024 season, but was among their final roster cuts and brought back to the practice squad immediately afterwards, where he was elevated 3 times though. Washington released Price from the practice squad after the season though, and in 2024 Price appeared in 3 games for the Commanders and recorded 1 tackle. So this is somebody that the Commanders are probably still interested in. Again, he's only 26 years old. Maybe this is somebody that they see having a ceiling to him because he is really athletic. We'll keep track of him, but again, just like the other Bobby, both of these Bobbies between Bobby Hart and Bobby Price, don't expect big things out of them, but just they're 2 names to keep track of that we've signed recently to the reserve future contract that will be a part of our 90-man roster as we go into off-season workouts. Be on the lookout for the 2 Bobbies. Maybe them makes enough of a presence and goes out there and balls out, and then they actually have a great chance of making a 53-man roster. Right now, it's long shots for both, but who knows? But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know if you love everything discussed in this video. Please still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Really appreciate y'all for supporting the videos, man. Of course, if you made it this far in the video, big salute to you, man. This video ended up taking longer than I expected. And to answer the trivia question, the answer is Roy Jefferson. I would have never have guessed that, man. So shouts out to any of y'all that somehow happened to know that before I gave you the answer, because that's insane, especially without Googling it. Salute to you if you already knew that answer, man. That's some very specific, serious Redskins history right there, man. And then also, of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video, especially a lot of the Jayden Daniels stuff, the RFK stuff, the Kliff Kingsbury stuff. Let me know how you feel about all of that. Really appreciate y'all. And of course, make sure you leave a like on the way out. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.